it's me, Jess. Welcome to my channel. I'm here with another channeled message. This is a specific message. It might resonate with you. It might not. All right, so this message is definitely coming in off of the back of yesterday's message. So I'll link that in the description below in case you missed that one or in case you want to revisit it for any reason. But basically in that message, we were talking about the difference between being good and being nice. And that is a theme that shows up on my channel quite a bit. And I feel like for this group, you've been put in a situation where you've really felt, lived, and experienced the difference between good and nice, possibly in more ways than one, because I'm getting the sense of spirit wanting to really get the mirror kind of on this. So for some of you, I think you've lived this experience like via yourself, and it probably has given rise to quite a bit of shame, but I don't know how you would be relating to that shame, because I feel like if you had done something like that, you probably would want to bury it or repress it, not think about it and say, well, that's in the past and I'm not really that person and I'm kind of moving on from that space. But I feel like you've also had people around you that represent these different archetypes. So let's start with the nice archetype. I think that you've had to face kinds of people that are nice on the surface, but are actually rotten on the inside. And these would be people that kind of know that they're that way. They know that if they put a veneer of nice on it, that it confuses people, that people will mistake that for a goodness, and that people will lower their guard, and that people will trust them, and they apply it knowingly, and they apply it very strategically in order to basically get away with murder. And I actually think there might be some tension around this person for you, possibly like in the immediate term, where you're kind of seeing that and being confronted with like, oh my gosh, I thought you were like me. But that there was a struggle with niceness, because I think you would be a person that struggles with your niceness and actually following through on being truly good in moments where you're called upon to act from a place of courage, and maybe put yourself out there. And I think you knew that this person didn't always live up to their niceties, but you didn't know that this is something that they're aware of. It's a strategical advantage kinds of thing, and this is a very selfish person. And I think you can, especially having been around that person, or if you've partnered with that person in any way, you may be getting lumped into a class with a bad name, basically, where like attracts like. So I think that person may have done something or gotten themselves involved in something that was wrong, and they did it on purpose, and you haven't pulled away from that person. So people think that you're that way too, kinds of a thing. Now, I think you've been around another person or another kind of person that's exactly like you, where they are nice and they struggle the same way you do with, always bringing that goodness to the forefront, especially in situations that are challenging, and they have to be courageous. And so you've looked in that mirror as well and possibly been hurt by that person. That's because of them not standing up, so the shoe is kind of on the other foot. But you've looked in the mirror in regards of that, if that makes sense. Now, I think you've been around another type of person here as well, and you probably would have like a soft spot in your heart for this person, but this is the person that is truly good, and I think they care nothing for being nice. This is probably a person that's not performative at all. They don't care for attention, because nice, my husband said this to me, nice always wants something, Jess. Even if it's recognition, even if it's praise my false ego identity of, telling me what a nice person is, or they want your friendship, or they want your approval in some way, because especially when it's divorced from genuine goodness, because to challenge, to possibly drop the nice facade in order to get real with someone real quick and say, hey, we don't do that. You risk a person, especially someone who is negatively oriented, you risk that person having a problem with you, right? But if you're truly good, goodness will take that risk, And so being in that nice kind of mindset, sometimes we don't even want to take that risk because we don't want to know. We don't want the bad people to out themselves, because it means we have to take some kind of follow-up action, which is, now that I've seen what you really are, I have to move away from you. And this is further like you further have to stand on business. You further have to stand on courage. And so I feel like you're stuck in this kind of like loop cycle. But I want to finish my thought here about this person who's genuinely good and probably very courageous. They might have like a gruffness to them. And it could be like their exterior, where they don't care very much about PR or like image management or facade or anything like that. And there's just really no facade with this person. You might have been scared of this person at first, but this is a truly good person. And when you get to know them, they're probably one of your favorite people. This is such a gem. This is such a rare person. I think they probably don't hang out with a lot of people because they don't like to play the game. They don't like to play the social game. They know that people are nice for no reason. This is a person who kind of they don't value nice, as much as they do value goodness. But you would know that this is a person that can be trusted in the day, and they can be trusted in at night, and that if they say they're going to do something, they're going to do something, and it's not going to be with a lot of fanfare. So I feel like you've had experiences here with all of these people, and I think it's really pushing you towards a realization that it really is worth the effort for you to try and master this within yourself. And I think in order to master this within yourself, you have to overcome quite a bit of programming, because I think for whoever you are, there was a lot of conditioning in your childhood where nice was really exalted. Niceness instead of goodness. And you might feel slighted by that. And here's an uncomfortable truth for you, is that being nice, there's a lot of superficial benefits that the people around you, when you're a child and they're telling you to be nice, right? They benefit from indoctrinating you into that cult of niceness, especially if it's your family, somebody who shares your culture or your religion, because you, as a child, represent those teachings and that culture and the efficacy of it. So nice is a very superficial way of, it's veneer, right? Of, look, this culture or this family, it works, and this is what it produces, this like impressive person. But it's not necessarily impressive if it's not also linked to goodness. And it misses the point of social groups, of having a family, of having some kind of moral structure that we can learn from. Is, okay, take this back to like, how can we make sure that we're actually being, truly good? And so I feel that instead of that, niceness was probably very emphasized, using your manners, using your politeness. And here's an uncomfortable truth, is that makes people a lot easier to control, because niceness is based on people pleasing, and it's gathering a self-identity that is based on the way that other people respond to you. And, I think I put this in the thumbnail for yesterday's reading, but a hard, uncomfortable truth in life that I feel like you're learning now is that not everyone should like you. It's not the flex you think it is, that everyone should like you. And I always think about that quote that says, "Judge me by my enemies. Judge me by my enemies." I'm not cool with everyone. You shouldn't be, because some people are rotten, and behaviors are certainly rotten. Behaviors form into moods, form into temperaments, form into personality, right? This is like habitual patterning. And I think that's what you're realizing. You're at risk of your these inclinations. And this is very much devil energy, because it's kind of going in for the sweet instead of the healthier meal. It's that dopamine hit of somebody thinking that you're, extremely nice. But then if I feel like it's a big rug being pulled out from under them moment when you enable somebody's bad behavior, you provide a shield for it, aid and comfort for it. And I think that would really bother you. Now, in terms of overcoming this, though, I think the first thing is recognizing, I think you're genuinely an empathic person. And I think in being that you've been around fake empaths, these are the kinds of people that will weaponize their emotions, but it's only their needy emotions, and they use it as a leash to kind of whip people around. And you'll notice that they never further their bad emotions. They don't ever say something like, "I have been feeling extremely guilty, and therefore I want to take responsibility." And that's the difference between you and them. And maybe, again, I think there could be a moment in time that you're actually experiencing, you feel shame and guilt around something, and it's building a pressure in you. And my thing that I think I'm meant to highlight for you in this message is not to run away from that. Because whoever this other person is, this influence that is, I think, nice, but they know what they're doing and they weaponize it, and they're very selfish, and they just want to get wherever it is they're going. They don't want to be bothered by your morality. They don't want to be bothered by your conscience. And you may be kind of seeing this person for the first time. You may be kind of experiencing this person. They're that devil voice of like, "Oh, it's not really a big deal. Treat people like shit. Just move on." In some kind of way. And I think this person may know that they can't say that directly to you, but that would be the undercurrent. That would be like the subtext of whatever it is that they're saying, or like whatever it is that they think you should do in the situation. It's just, don't fix it, And for some of you, this happened in the past, but you're starting to recognize that you really should have allowed your conscience, because I think there's a feeling of guilt and shame, but what it is your conscience, because we talk about how guilt and shame can be toxic emotions, but you shouldn't ever run away from them. They are emotions, and your emotions are data, and it's telling you that you were out of alignment. You acted out of character, and that something needs to be rectified here. And that's what I think this is actually using your internal landscape to push yourself forward here in some kind of way, and that's how you can make progress. And so allowing this negative feeling to kind of build up pressure, it's going to build a resistance in you. And that's, I think, the important thing. And this is where having compassion for yourself because you're not going to get it right, the first time. You are in progress, and you have kind of gone the path of least resistance because you're torn between wanting people to like you and feeling like your identity depends on that. Okay, and that's a difficult cycle to break, and you've certainly been indoctrinated and practiced in that for the majority of your life, for whoever you are that's waking up to this. So you're not going to change it over life. You will change it over life, but you're not going to change it overnight, is what I meant to say. And this is what we call having a process-oriented mindset, is recognizing that life comes in moments. And so you don't have to just become a different person overnight, because I think that's the enormity of it, where you're like, I think you feel repelled and repulsed by the person that you are when you're near this other person, and that you could have ever gone along with this, or this person's lack of conscience. There's a real repulsion, and you want to just push away from it, and you want to push away from it all at once, just reject it all at once. And I think you're kind of stuck in the shame, and you're like, I'm literally never going to do this again. Okay, well, just understand that this is habit, and it's kind of an addiction. It's a dopamine addiction, just like doing a drug would be. It builds that same thing, because you get a high. You feed off of people thinking that you're a nice person. And I feel like maybe that's gotten taken away from you now. But what I'm saying is, the way to change this is to allow this bad feeling to do its job. Allow it to build in you and build a resistance in you. This pressure is building a resistance in you. Now, I can remember being a child, and because I grew up in an extremely Christian household. Well, they were hypocrite Christians. But when I was very, very young, I was just surrounded by Christianity all the time. Like, I went to a Christian Bible school. My family only hung out with other Christians. Like, I was just really indoctrinated super early is what I mean. And so I had this kind of like just deep desire to please Jesus. And I'm not trying to like make this, I promise I'm making a point with this. But that was separate from me than my indoctrination into Christianity, because I've always just had a deep love, respect for Jesus that you could never have indoctrinated me into. I read his story, and I had a genuine, I'm impressed, I want to be like that. And it was very clear to me all the things that he did that were brave, and all the things that he did that were rebellious but in alignment with goodness. You don't hear of Jesus speaking at the pulpit. He's always outside, right? He's the divine rebel. He moves away from his indoctrination. That was one of the things that I just clocked immediately. And I knew I couldn't do it, but I just wanted to try. I was always taught that people could never be perfect, but that we were trying to live up to that. And so I was just going to try. And I feel like that's what you're being asked to do in this moment, is just try to live up to some kind of value that you have or ideal. And that is building a resistance, and it will happen gradually over time. Now, when I was a kid, and you're figuring out your social self. So, I was indoctrinated in that morality, and I really wanted to live up to it. And it would make me feel bad if I didn't live up to it. And so when I would be around other little kids, who were also finding their way through the world, and they would do little naughty things, and, I would do naughty things, and we would kind of feed off of each other, that would start to make me feel bad. And especially what would bother me is like their treatment of other people. If I was like being pulled in, okay, well, are we going to laugh at this person or that? And it would always make me feel bad. And I didn't really run from that feeling, because at night I would write in my diary, and I would pray to God and everything. And I would talk about how embarrassed and ashamed I was that I didn't have his courage to stand up for somebody, or to do the right thing, and how badly I wanted to be able to do that. And so it would build in me. That's what I'm saying, is I sat in the bad feeling of it, even though I didn't know what to do, because I'd been like kind of gone down this habit. And eventually it just pulled, almost like I was on a leash or something. It built such a strength in me that one day I was a match for it, and it was like, I just didn't want to go along with it. And then I went along with it anyways. But I had that moment of resistance, but I didn't really know what else to do. But that was the first step. And then that happened a couple more times. And then I used my small voice. And I said, no, why don't we do something else? I actually really like that person. Actually, and it was my small voice. It was just kind of like, well, maybe sort of, if you kind of, all those caveats, the way that you kind of, maybe sort of you could look at them as a good person, or maybe sort of, you could remember when they lent me a pencil the other day, and I just don't like talking about a person who lent me a pencil. Like, they're clearly a nice person, something like that. It was a small voice at first. And I remember being terrified and just kind of waiting to see their response. And you know what? A lot of times it was fine. It was like, well, okay. And they would shift the conversation, because you know what it does is it puts the accountability back on that person, and the shame was no longer mine, because they were pushing their shame into me. It was no longer mine. It was theirs, because they got called out. And I wasn't trying to be an asshole or anything, but that was coming from them for whatever reason. But it originates in them. And they need to take responsibility for it. And it's for them to do, but I'm not going to be an accomplice and I don't want to participate. And then I got better and better and better at being able to do that. And some of those relationships, they just kind of fell by the wayside because maybe that person felt awkward around me. Maybe I felt awkward around them. It was just kind of, I definitely have memories of that and where that even got like weird or ugly or gross. But that's what, when I say on here that nothing is worth you hating yourself, nothing is. It just puts you in such a weakened position. For me, because I care and I'm trying to be so moral, it just takes up so much of my time. It takes up so much of my energy because of my goals and my principles and who I want to be as a person. And so it's just nothing is worth that. So if I have to be alone or if I have to be ostracized or if I have to get made fun of because I'm such a square or like whatever, like fine, so be it. But I just I want to be the kind of person that I want to be, and I want to be in charge of that. So the way that you do that is just meeting the moment. And that's what I'm saying. It's like it's a process-oriented mindset. Just know that you're in process and celebrate the little wins. Notice when that thing in you builds to the point where it's a match for whatever it is that you're facing in the world. And know that that's progress. Know that that's the point. Know that that is the spiritual point of whatever it is that you've gone through, and be gentle with yourself and just say, you know what, this is a win. And then when you use that small voice, even if it goes so sideways and you trip all over your words and you fold and you cave the next minute, just know that that was progress. That's what progress looks like. It looks messy and then you backslide sometimes, but learn how to be your own best friend and be your own advocate and to recognize those changes. And I think in terms of meeting the moment, right? So what that means is, because remember I was telling you, I think there's a repulsion here. Well, you're not going to just change, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you're not going to live the entirety of the rest of your life in its glorious perfection in the next moment. So don't expect that of yourself. You're setting yourself up for failure. Remember, be your own best friend here. It's moment by moment. Just try to meet the moment. Even if you meet it with your small voice, even if your voice shakes, even if you, get all tongue-tied and you're like, I don't literally know what I'm doing. Listen, and you just pour out to this person. And trust me, some of these people are not going to be safe people. Because this nice person that you've got around you, it's an archetype, so there could be more than one person that they're nice and they're strategic about it and they know this is a person who milks other people. This is an ass kiss. This is a creep. This is a person who butters people up in order to try to slide into some kind of advantageous position, and they just facade manage. That's what their niceness is, because it's needy and it's selfish and it wants something and they just facade manage. And that is the energy of that niceness when it's separated from goodness. And I think that's what you're feeling the ick about with yourself, where you're like, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be, right? But in those moments where you go along with a person like that, you're similarly, I think, thinking that life unfolds in moments, and that was just one moment, and that it's not indicative of who you are. But it's a slippery slope. This person's very slippery, right? And we are the accumulation. And so it's important not to kick this rock down the road. So see, it's about flipping the way that you meet the moment and the way that you think about the momentariness of life, where you don't use it as an excuse or as a crutch. Instead, hold yourself accountable in the moment, but use it as to gain traction, use it to dig your heels in, actually, and say, you know what, this is just a single moment. And I'm going to use my small voice and I'm going to see what happens, because it's just one moment. And for some of you, you're going to have to be confronted with the reality of the people around you, because to you probably think, well, I'm trying to stand up for what I feel like is right. And I'm just doing it in this single moment. Me and this other person have our entire friendship behind us. So if they can't love me after this, then that says something, doesn't it? It says something. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that there's something wrong with you. Because some people are going to feel awkward, but it kicks them off on their own sort of journey, and they might come back around to you. And I think that could also be how you decipher between who's that nice kind of person that's a slippery snake and who's the nice person that's like you. Because the nice person like you is going to say, it's also been bothering me. But also, I don't know, some of you have very slippery people around you. People have shocked me before, like with just the depths of their depravity, and it's the rare person. But I'm just saying, like, it's just a matter of meeting the moment, and not using, well, it was just a momentary thing as like an excuse. That's not the same thing as compassion, okay? That's just abdicating self-responsibility. And that's how these nice people, and I say this as a recovering nice person, if we don't do these kinds of things where we practice our courage, this is how you end up in the belly of the beast. And you literally have no idea how you got there, because to you were always navigating trying to be a nice person, and you thought that you were standing up like for your values, but instead you were abdicating all of your values in face of what you are telling yourself is niceness, but it's actually cowardice. What it is actually cowardice. Only cowards are nice to everybody. Period, point blank. Period, point blank. Only cowards are nice to everybody. And I feel like that's what you are learning. You're learning to not stop calling it niceness when it's actually cowardice. You know, there's a time and a place for nice, like especially if you don't know anybody and you're, you know, buying something at a gas station, you're meeting someone for the first time. I'm not telling you to go around like being a jerk, you know, but and especially not to be a jerk for being a jerk's sake. But when the moment finds you, when the battle picks you, you know, just we have to make sure that evil cannot exist in our world because a good person has done nothing, you know, and you don't even have to superimpose it, because I think for a lot of you, you are people are friendly to you. You are considered a friend, possibly to people who are incapable of being reciprocal in that energy, and they just basically want to use you. And that will illuminate where you've become a doormat and where you've become an enabler. And again, allow that to gross you out, allow that to repel you, and allow it to build that strength in you, where it will one day it's going to be strong. One day it will be, and it'll just catch you off guard. Where you say, you know what? I'm not this person anymore, actually, because I've been changing internally. And that's allowing your external circumstances to change you on the inside. It's alchemy. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in a single step. And I think sometimes we don't talk about that enough as spiritual people when we talk about alchemizing ourselves, because we shine the light of consciousness, and it changes quite a bit. You know, once you see something, you can't unsee it. But it's important not to think, okay, now I have to live, you know, the rest of my life in the next moment and change everything and be perfect from here on out, because it's impossible. You're setting yourself up for failure. So yes, you've shined the light of consciousness on something. Be loving to yourself, be compassionate, be your own best friend. And if you have to start with the small voice, start with the small voice. If you have to start by saying, look, this is uncomfortable for me, but I've been feeling this way for a long time, and you know, this is what's important to me, and I don't really know how to bridge this gap here. You can try to bring them in on it, you know, like, help me, you know, I need you to help me live up to who I want to be, you know, it doesn't make me feel good when we do this, or it doesn't, you know, and that person should be there for you, just the way that you're there. It shouldn't always be you having to be conciliatory. And there's a place in you that you should never be conciliatory. And that has to do with that Aries energy, yourself. You can't ever sacrifice yourself and your principles and your values. That's not where you're asked to make a concession. And that goes to the Libra ethos of being the diplomat. There are certain things that are off the negotiating table. They just are. And Libra also rules over making decisions. And so that's when it's time to make a decision that's fair and balanced. And sometimes if someone, you know, I had somebody say to me once, my boundary is for you to not have any boundaries. That's essentially what that person said to me. And it's like, great, that's an unequitable situation. You made my decision easy. I said that in my head, but I was like, great. Because they said, I had kind of tried to crack the door open to see if a relationship was possible. And that's one of the first things they said, is they needed to know all this personal information about me, basically, so where they could find me and I couldn't hold my boundary as well with them. And they were like, I just don't think that I can pursue a relationship with you again if I don't know all these things about you, and basically I have access to you whenever I want. And I was like, great, you've made that decision very easily. And I literally just said, then we're not gonna have a relationship. And I blocked them in the next moment, and I never looked back. You know, thanks. See how that there's teeth in that? Because a lot of times when people think Libra, they think pushover. And I'm a recovering pushover. So I say this with the utmost of compassion. It's a difficult journey, but it's one that you can take, and the world will be a much better place when the people who are genuinely good people and nice people actually have a backbone and are aligning themselves with things that deserve that alignment. So that's what I have for you. If that resonates, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Bye.